On today's show, the shorthanded Houston Rockets fall to the Boston Celtics. Why we don't have to overreact to this loss. A couple lessons that we can learn from this game, and how in the hell are the Houston Rockets going to survive without Jabari Smith Jr. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. Share your thoughts on this loss against the Celtics, or just do a drive-by, say go Rockets. It helps us out a ton. Also subscribe to the daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. We sincerely appreciate that. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Rockets, well, a version of the Houston Rockets, missing so many key players, falling to the Boston Celtics 109-86. Now, the Celtics were also not whole in this game. Celtics were missing Jalen Brown and Al Horford, and the Rockets were missing still Thompson, serving game 2 of his 2-game suspension. Still no Tari Eason, now the 8th straight game missed with his lower left leg injury maintenance, which at this point, they're continuing to call it maintenance, but he's dealing with soreness. There's a level of pain tolerance here. Red flags abound when it comes to Tari Eason. And then the newest addition to the Houston Rockets injury report, Jabari Smith Jr., who broke his left hand at Rockets shoot-around, didn't even know it was broken when he spoke to the media after shoot-around. That's wild. I don't remember the last time a player, like, first off, how do you break your hand at shoot-around? Second, like, I could maybe understand breaking your hand in practice, like when you're like actually practicing, going hard, or whatever, but shoot-around is supposed to be like a little bit more casual than like practice. So that sucks, and Jabari is now going to be out for 4 to 8 weeks, so a month to 2 months with no Jabari Smith Jr. for the Rockets, whose front court is already dangerously thin with the question marks surrounding Tari Eason's injury, and in this game with no Thompson. So just rough sledding for this Rockets team. They fall 109-86, and look, we're going to talk about how the Rockets are going to manage to survive or not survive without Jabari Smith Jr. moving forward. Should a trade for a player like Cam Johnson be on the table? We'll talk about that later on. Also want to share a couple, I think, lessons to be learned from this game, specifically about Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. But I just want to open this thing up by basically saying, look, there is zero reason to overreact to this loss. Now, some of the issues in this game are issues that the Rockets have been plagued by all season long, but we don't really need to draw any like crazy in-depth think pieces or any referendums about this Rockets team playing literally the defending champion Celtics, arguably the best team, if not one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the entire NBA this season. And the biggest thing to me is this Rockets team with no Jabari, no Tari, and no Thompson, a team that has built its identity this season on defense, is absolutely unequivocally not the same team without those 3 players. They're just not. Those 3 players are so key and so instrumental to what the Houston Rockets have achieved this season that going out there without them, it's not even the same basketball team. It's really not. Look, they started Uncle Jeff Green in place of Jabari Smith Jr., which honestly was like the wild card draw, because I definitely thought it was like a lot of Rockets fans were like clamoring for Cam Whitmore to be in the starting lineup. In the back of my head, I was thinking, nah, it's not going to be Cam. It'll be Jayshawn Tate. He'll get the starting nod. And then Ime was like, wild card, Jeff Green, here you go. And Jeff didn't do poorly, and he's got still plenty left in the tank. But this there's so much that those three guys bring to the table. Obviously, look, Jabari is invaluable to this Rockets team. His defensive versatility, being able to slide up and down and guard on the wing, but also sliding over to be the small ball five in certain lineups, to have that 5-out spacing offensively and then defensively, to be able to have the ability to switch 1 through 5 is such a weapon for Ime to be able to throw out there situationally. And then the reason we've seen this Rockets team have so much success this season is in large part, or in no small part, due to the Terror Twins checking in off the bench, right? Amin Thompson, Tari, Eason. When those two guys checked in together, they were able to dominate teams with their impact off the bench on both sides of the floor. And really, they were the backbone of this Houston Rockets defense. So I don't think there's really any major conclusions to be drawn here from how the Rockets played against a very, very good Boston Celtics team without some of their most impactful players on the floor. I will say, though, the other element of it, and this is, I think a little bit, some encouraging signs, is that the Rockets actually kind of made this thing a competitive game. It wasn't like they got, you look at the final score, lost by 23 points, sure. It wasn't until the fourth quarter that this thing completely came off the rails. The Rockets were still very much within striking distance after 3 quarters, and it wasn't until the top of the fourth quarter where the Celtics went on an 11-0 run. The Rockets went like 0-5 to start the quarter. They had a turnover mixed in there. Like, it's just top of the fourth quarter is where things went from bad to completely unmanageable. But the Rockets managed to respond throughout various stretches of this game. The Celtics would, put together, a couple made threes, some baskets, whatever, pull ahead by 10, 12, 14, whatever, and the Rockets would mount their comeback and kind of claw their way back into it. And, unfortunately, the math advantage was just not in the favor of the Houston Rockets. The Celtics went 19 of 39 from 3. It's what they've done all season long. They're maybe not the best three-point shooting team percentage-wise in the NBA, but they're certainly the best three-point shooting team as far as their overall offensive approach and the sheer volume of threes that they're getting up this season. So they hit 19 threes, 48.7% from downtown. Meanwhile, Rockets only hit 10 threes on a paltry 27.8% from downtown. So the Celtics were plus 27 from beyond the arc. That's the game. That's literally the game right there. If you don't hit threes against the Celtics, you will not be able to beat them. It's literally that simple. Rockets lost by 23. Celtics were plus 27 from beyond the arc. That's basically it. And look, I want to give a lot of credit, though, to Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics defense, because Alperen Sengun started this game, and it looked like he was on a heater. It looked like he was going to go for 30-plus, maybe 40-plus, the way this game started out. He was flat-out dominating Kristaps Porzingis, cooking him, flambe, charbroiled, whatever you want to call it. Had Porzingis in foul trouble early, and Kristaps had zero answer for Alp in the first quarter of this game. And then early in the second quarter, Mazzulla flipped the script and went with double bigs to slow down Alperen Sengun. And for the remainder of the game, there was 2 of the 3 Celtics bigs, whether it was Porzingis, Neemias Queta, or Luke Kornet. 2 of those 3 guys were basically on the floor the entire rest of the way to neutralize Alperen Sengun. In fact, the Celtics, Mazzulla adjusted the starting lineup at halftime. Sam Hauser started for the Celtics in this game, and instead, Luke Kornet started the second half in order to maintain the double big out there to slow down Alperen Sengun. And it worked. Alp, after his insanely strong start, was just a non-factor the rest of the game. Finished a team worst minus 28 for the Rockets, and was just completely neutralized. And we're going to talk about Sengun and how he needs to be better in segment 2, especially against double teams, which was a big part of his struggles in this game. But overall, I think it was a little encouraging that the Rockets were able to kind of maintain pace with the Celtics despite missing so many of their important players. And again, yes, the Celtics weren't at full strength either. But it's hard to come away with any sweeping conclusions from this game when, frankly, neither team were at full health. And again, this Rockets team is so different. This version of this Rockets team is so drastically different from the version that we've seen for a majority of this season. And I did see some people kind of commenting on, like Alperen Sengun's defense in this game in particular was kind of a sticking point for some Rockets fans. And at the end of the day, like Alperen Sengun playing defense on a team that has Jeff Green and Cam Whitmore and Aaron Holiday eating up a bulk of minutes out there on the floor is very different than Alperen Sengun as the backline defender for a team that is featuring Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari, Eason, and Amin Thompson, right? Guys who fill in on the wings, guys who are defensively versatile, guys who play like the weak side help defender role, who blow up plays, who create havoc on the defensive side and you know, turn defense into offense for this team, all those things that those guys provide. So I just wanted to start things off by basically kind of illustrating that point, that this is just a drastically different Houston Rockets team, and you don't have to overreact to this loss against, a very, very good Boston Celtics team. Coming up, I do want to share what I think are a couple lessons that can be learned from this game about Jalen Green, about Alperen Sengun, as well as getting to how this Houston Rockets team is going to be able to survive, or not survive, without Jabari Smith Jr. for the next month or two of this NBA season. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many different ways for you to pick up a dub. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown first, how many points each team is going to score. So many different ways to get in on the action. You can check out their parlay builder, check out the different season awards specials. You can still get your hands on those before the season closes, or the outright favorites to win this year's Super Bowl. Right now, the Chiefs plus 360, the Lions plus 470, the Bills plus 600, and then rounding out the top five, the Ravens at plus 650, and the Eagles plus 700. So for all those odds and so much more, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. One other quick area that I wanted to mention that I should have gotten to in segment one is the Rockets did, despite not having so many of their key pieces defensively, they did, I think, play some inspired defense in certain stretches of this game against the Boston Celtics. Again, in the third quarter, they limited them to just 17 points in that third frame. They forced like 4 or 5 like traveling violations on the Celtics. There were some very great like individual man-to-man defense being played by the Rockets in this game. And so, you know, it wasn't, again, this wasn't like a complete dumpster fire of a game. This wasn't a game where you look up and it's, you know, the Rockets are down 30, down 40. Like the Celtics did have to fight to win this game. Now, I will say that, well, it looked like everything was kind of coming easy to the Boston Celtics in the sense that their offense is just so polished, right? They get a paint touch, they kick it out for 3, and they've got such great shooters up and down the roster. It's truly unbelievable. Derek White led the way for them, 23 points on 6 of 12 shooting. Peyton Pritchard off the bench was 4 of 6 from downtown. Drew Holiday had the hot start in that first quarter. He went 2 for 5. Jason Tatum kind of heated up as the game went along, but, you know, kind of a very quiet 20 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. He had like 8 quick points to close the first half to kind of balloon that lead back up for the Celtics after the Rockets had kind of cut back into it just before halftime. He hit like a pair of triples and got a bucket right at the rim. And so, I mean, the Celtics just have so many weapons. It's so hard to guard them. And yet the Rockets still had some stretches where they looked more than capable at slowing down this Celtics team despite missing so many of their best impactful defenders. And that's the identity of this Rockets team. It's harder to capitalize on some of those moments as well without their transition weapons, without Amin Thompson, without Tari, Eason, guys who cause live ball turnovers and are able to get out and run in transition. The Rockets did force 14 Celtics turnovers, but they only scored 9 points off of those 14 turnovers. And then the other side of issues in this game for the Rockets was their inability to secure defensive rebounds after some of the stops that they did initially get. Celtics had 12 offensive boards in this game. I didn't even pull up the second chance points. I should have. But, you know, it's one of those where it's like Celtics got so many different kickouts for wide open threes. In fact, I'll waffle for a second and I'll get it pulled up here because I am very curious how many second chance points the Celtics actually did have in this game. 15 second chance points compared to 19 by the Rockets. And I can almost guarantee you that all 15 of those second chance points were kickouts for wide open threes after missing the initial three. So the Rockets needed to do a better job protecting the defensive glass and not giving up those second and third chance opportunities to the Celtics. But let's get into, I think, a couple of the lessons, a couple of things that we can take away from this game. First of which, I want to highlight Jalen Green's strong performance, because he was about one of the only positive silver linings from this game. He's put together now a pair of really solid games, first against the Dallas Mavericks, then here against the Boston Celtics. 27 points, 10 of 21 shooting, 5 of 13 from downtown, hit a couple free throws, had a few rebounds, only 1 assist. And again, the Rockets as a team did a very, very poor job facilitating the basketball and getting other guys involved. Ime talked about it after the game. They played in a crowd way too much. They were indecisive with the basketball, and they kind of walked themselves into traffic a lot. There were a lot of possessions with it wound up with the Rockets just, basically walling themselves off by not making the right read before the Celtics were able to kind of collapse on whoever did have the basketball. And a lot of indecision on the perimeter when the Rockets did get the kick out, get the right pass out to a shooter. There were way too many opportunities where the Rockets would pass on what would have been a wide open shot in favor of dribbling and attacking again, or just putting the ball on the deck and then having to, get into a rushed shot attempt instead, or a contested shot attempt instead of just taking the open one first. So that was incredibly frustrating to witness. But Jalen had some insane shot making in this game. He really did. He was one of the few bright spots, really the only bright spot offensively for the Rockets in this game. And to do it against a team like the Celtics, to do it against a team that can lock in and it, has regressed a little bit defensively this season, but in moments where they do decide to lock in and be the best version of themselves, this Celtics team is still arguably one of the best, if not maybe the best defense in the entire NBA, right up there with the Thunder, with the Rockets, with the Magic, when they want to be, of course. And for Jalen, it really felt like there was an emphasis from Ime to essentially put the ball in Jalen Green's hands and let him go to work. And again, we've gone back and forth with this discussion this season and seeing different versions of this team where, if it's too much Fred VanVleet or it's not enough Jalen Green, and it kind of feels like maybe over these last couple of games, we're seeing a version where Ime is basically like, no, I'm putting the ball in Jalen Green's hands. Fred, you're going to play more of an off-ball ancillary role. And I think that is even though there are certain drawbacks to Jalen Green as the quote unquote lead guard, it almost feels like you have to play that way in order to try and achieve the best version of this team, because Jalen struggles to play off ball of Fred VanVleet. He just does. Fred is better equipped with his skill set to play off ball to Jalen Green than vice versa. And so I like the approach because the Rockets really don't have another choice at this point. They need Jalen Green to play like this on a nightly basis to kind of unlock the best version of this team. And it's encouraging to see him do it a couple games in a row against, again, very staunch competition in the Mavericks, still not full health, but still good Mavericks team, great Mavericks team, in fact, and a very great Boston Celtics team. So it'll be interesting to kind of watch this pattern continue and see how Ime tries to balance the shot diet and who's running the offense and how the Jalen Fred dynamic kind of continues this season. But some really encouraging play from Jalen, not only offensively, but then on the defensive side of the basketball. Jalen Green, this might have been Jalen Green's best defensive performance all season long. He had a couple insane blocks in this game. He had one block on Jason Tatum that was ridiculous. Both Jalen Green and Jeff Green got up to try and contest it, and Jalen was the one who ultimately walked away with the block. He had another one. I can't remember who it was on, but he went up for the initial contest. It might have been Cornette under the basket, if I'm not mistaken. Went up, was flying past the Celtics player, and missed the initial swing for the block, and then swung his arm back and got the second contest and blocked it with his forearm. Just kind of a ridiculous defensive play. And on top of that, he had some really encouraging defensive possessions, guarding Jason Tatum one-on-one in like isolation. Tatum had 20 points, but he took 19 shots to get there. He was only 7 of 19 shooting in this game. So yeah, 4 of 10 from downtown, but only 3 of 9 inside the arc. So there were moments where Tatum, got to, like, there was one individual where Jalen kind of like forced him into a really tough contested fadeaway from like the free throw line, really bodied up to him. And, that's, again, testament to Jalen Green's growth for being able to be such an impactful defender, despite being undersized, despite not having the sheer like muscle mass and size that other players do. He's still able to make his presence felt defensively at times, and especially seeing him use his athleticism for some of those blocks, like that's inspiring stuff. That's great basketball, and those are the things that, despite the offensive struggles, despite the inconsistency in his play, those are the things that, will continue to earn him and warrant him, a prominent role moving forward. And those are the things that I'm sure that Ime sees behind the scenes and continues to preach and try to instill in all these guys. So Jalen deserves a ton of credit for literally being the best player on the floor for the Rockets in this game. I want to highlight here Alperen Sengun's struggles, because this is going to continue to, this is the next mountain that Sengun has to climb to continue to be the best version of himself and to really unlock the next level of his play as an NBA player and as kind of the best player for this Rockets team. And that's how to navigate the double teams, how to make quicker decisions based on how an opposing team is guarding you. We see what happens when Sengun is being guarded in single coverage. He's borderline unstoppable. He figures it out really quickly how to attack opposing bigs, and it does look like he's starting to regain some of his touch around the rim. There's definitely still moments where he gets some, he'll make the move. He does all the hard work, right? He'll shake the defender, he'll body him, he'll bump him, he'll spin, and he does all the work to get right to the rim or to get to his spot, a spot where he should make the shot. And then his touch is just like 2% off, 3% off, whatever. And it's been brought up before, and it bears repeating that, he added so much strength this offseason, really coming in the best shape of his NBA career. And you're seeing that strength pay dividends, both on the defensive side, on the offensive side, how he's improved as a rebounder, right? All the physicality that he brings to his game, the box outs, everything. But adding that much strength has definitely messed with his touch a little bit, right? The ball is not as light as it used to be, or as heavy as it used to be, whatever. Like, he's got to reestablish and re-understand how to, get back to those soft touches around the basket, and he's going to get there. It's just going to take him a little bit of time. But the bigger issue, or not necessarily, the bigger issue and the bigger thing that he's going to have to overcome is figuring out, okay, when I'm being guarded in single coverage, I can attack, I can make the play, and even if they do send a late double team, I can choose. Am I splitting the double? Am I still scoring? Am I powering through contact? Am I drawing a foul? Am I facilitating? Am I kicking it out to my shooters? And that's the issue, is there were so many times in this game where Sengun was so late making the read, right? He'd start the move, and then he'd pick up his dribble, and the moment he picked up his dribble, the second defender was there, or there was somebody in the passing lane, or he didn't have the outlet to the shooter that he needed. And some of that can be boiled down to the Rockets also need to find maybe some more creative ways to make sure that there are outlets for Sengun. Sengun needs to understand where his kick-out passes are going to be, rather than just, okay, I'm attacking in the middle of the floor, and, maybe the help comes from the weak side. Maybe it's coming from the strong side. Maybe it's from the, strong side corner, whatever. He needs to understand where that help is coming from and where his passes are going to ultimately be. And once he does that, right? And again, it's different every single game. If teams flash with a quick trap right when he touches the basketball, if they delay the trap, if they wait for him to put the ball on the floor before sending a defender, like, there's so many different variations of how teams have tried to double and slow down Sengun this season. And in this game, the Celtics elected to do it with double bigs. They had the first big on Sengun, Porzingis. Sengun cooked him completely. Then they came back with double bigs, and having that second big be able to come over and have all that length to really obstruct Alperen Sengun, to prevent some of those easy passing lanes, and to provide that pressure, right, that size against him, it really completely took him out of the game. So Ime talked about that a lot post-game, and there are some games where Sengun does a phenomenal job of it. There's some games where he does a great job finding the right, making the right reads, the right passes, connecting with his teammates, and then, when they knock down the shots, it looks beautiful. There's some games where he does all the right work, where he makes the right reads, and then Rockets players can't knock down shots. And then there's games like this one where players aren't knocking down shots, and he's failing to make the right reads, so they're not even getting as many opportunities as they should in the first place to try and knock down the shots, right? Again, the Rockets in this game, only 9 assists. That's borderline untenable. Less than 10 assists shows that you did a very poor job of creating for your teammates, or your teammates did a poor job capitalizing on the opportunities that were created within the flow of the offense, which it felt like it was a little bit of both worlds in this game for the Rockets. So wanted to kind of highlight those areas, those couple things in regards to Jalen and Sengun, their level of play against the Celtics. Coming up, want to talk about Jabari Smith Jr., his injury for this Houston Rockets team. They'll be without him for the next 4 to 8 weeks. What that means, how the Rockets are going to try and survive without him, and should we see a trade on the horizon for this team? I've got a hypothetical for you coming up around the corner. We'll get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, going to live events is the absolute best. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. One of my favorite memories this past year was going to a Taking Back Sunday concert. The energy, the excitement, it was amazing, right? Now Game Time's made it even easier for you to get tickets to your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. The feature filters out fluff to only show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different ticketing offers. Earlier this week, I was checking out for some Rockets tickets a little bit later this month, trying to go with some friends, and using the Game Time app, it made it so seamless. You can find amazing deals and even see the view from your seat before buying. The super deal was really impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, with the app's all-in pricing, it shows you the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. They're fully transparent from start to finish. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right. No Jabari Smith Jr. for the Houston Rockets moving forward. Amin Thompson will be the starter for Jabari Smith Jr. once he returns from serving his suspension. So the Rockets will have Amin Thompson back in the front court starting Sunday against the Lakers, which is, a huge benefit getting him back. Still TBD on what's going on with Tari Eason. That is a very unfortunate circumstance that the Rockets are also dealing with. And again, 4 to 8 weeks of no Jabari Smith Jr. Frankly, it just sucks, right? Because this is, the Rockets for the majority of this season, up until the Tari stuff started, and now with Jabari getting hurt, the Rockets had basically managed to avoid the injury bug for a majority of this season. And now the injuries are ramping up, right? You lose 2 of your most impactful players. We have no idea when or if the Rockets are getting Tari Eason back anytime soon. And now they're without Jabari for the next 2 months. They're very thin in the front court. Now, Dillon Brooks, he's holding it down. He's having a career year. He's been awesome offensively. He's the head of the snake on defense. And Amin Thompson's been sensational as well. So you still have 2 very impactful players there. And Jayshawn Tate, despite having his limitations as a shooter, has been great, providing some spark, some energy off the Houston Rockets bench. And this does allow kind of a bigger opportunity for Cam Whitmore, although Cam really struggled against the Celtics in the aftermath of his comments after last game about what he did, and then to come out and have the performance he did against the Celtics is not the greatest look of all time, and that's the inconsistency for a young player right there. But what are the Rockets going to do? Because look, there's nobody else on the roster that can replicate what Jabari does. He's the second best shooter in the Rockets rotation behind Dillon Brooks. He is the only player that is actually above average for size, height, whatever, at his position. Everywhere else, across the board, the Rockets are undersized with Fred VanVleet, with Jalen Green, with Dillon Brooks, and with Alperen Sengun. Jabari is the only plus-size player at his position for this Rockets team. And then on top of that, he's kind of their like secret weapon when Ime decides that he wants to play Jabari Smith Jr. as the backup 5. I mentioned it in segment 1, but having that 5 out spacing offensively and then the switch everything 1 through 5 defensive scheme that the Rockets can run with Jabari at the 5 with really no drop off in rebounding, or at least length and defensive capability, it's huge. So you lose all these benefits without Jabari Smith Jr. And in a stacked Western Conference, the Rockets are not exactly in a position to where, if they're just content, they're playing with house money, they're okay. Hey, we already overachieved this season. We're okay if we slide down in the standings some. I don't know. It would just be really frustrating to see that happen after the success that the team has had this year. And it feels like the Rockets could make a very reasonable trade to alleviate the loss of Jabari Smith Jr. in the interim, and also still, have a very capable rotation piece for when everybody is back and healthy later on this season. And that guy is Cam Johnson. Look, the Nets are reportedly looking for multiple first-round picks for Cam Johnson. He's going to be the guy that fetches the most value of any of the players that they've been looking to offload and trade. So far, they've already gotten rid of Dennis Schroeder. They got rid of Dorian Finney-Smith. And Cam Johnson's kind of, one of the remaining pieces that they have kind of on the trading block. Here's a trade pitch by Rockets legend Beema Thug, Clutch Fans poster, amateur capologist. Shout out to David, who he put together this idea. Cam Johnson comes to Houston. Rockets trade out Steven Adams, Jayshawn Tate, and then they would forgive the 2027 Brooklyn pick swap, and then they would give the Brooklyn Nets the 2027 pick, which would be the worst of either Houston or Phoenix's picks that season. I think that's a pretty clean trade, all things considered. And again, it kind of stinks to have to cash in on that final Brooklyn Nets pick swap, but getting Cam Johnson back, a guy who is still under contract for a few more seasons, going off the top of my head, a few more years, I believe, is a certified scorer, is a knockdown three-point shooter, is a plus defender, gives the Rockets a little bit more size on the wing. He's 6'8", right? And you can play him, realistically, you can play Cam Johnson like 2 through 4 on the floor. You just throw him on the wing. He can guard down a couple spots. He can guard up a couple spots. And in the interim, with no Jabari Smith Jr. for the next, month to 2 months, you make this trade, your wing rotation is suddenly Dillon Brooks, Dillon Brooks, Cam Johnson, and Amin Thompson still coming off the bench, instead of Dillon Brooks and Amin Thompson starting, which at times can compound the fact that the Rockets don't have enough shooting on the roster with Amin Thompson out there, and then Jayshawn Tate coming off the bench, which further complicates things from a shooting perspective. So I don't subscribe to the notion of making a trade just for the sake of like staying afloat, quote unquote, this season or trying to salvage this season or whatever. But I do think that there's merit to this because Cam Johnson is a piece that could absolutely still be a staple part of the rotation moving forward past that point. But what it would do conceivably is it would eat into, once everybody was healthy, any minutes that you would envision being left over for Cam Whitmore to kind of break his way into the Rockets rotation, those minutes would practically be non-existent at that point, because you'd be looking at your starting 5 of Fred, Jalen, Dillon, Jabari, and Sengun, and then the rest of your 8-man rotation would be some combination of Cam Johnson, Amin Thompson, and Tari Eason off the Rockets bench. And then situationally, right, maybe you would have a couple spot minutes at the guard spot, be it to Aaron Holiday, Reed Sheppard, and maybe some spot minutes for Cam Whitmore. But the only ball handlers at that point are Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green, which the Rockets are already kind of staggering the minutes between those two guys. And then maybe some spot minutes at the 5 for a Jock Landale type. I would say that I don't know if it actually works salary-wise, but if you could do Jock Landale instead of Steven Adams in this trade, or if you could do Jeff Green instead of Steven Adams in this trade, I would do that, because Steven Adams has been playing some really strong basketball as of late. And as he continues to ramp up and look better and better with each passing game, I do think there's a world where Steven Adams could by himself fetch you like a future first round draft pick at this trade deadline. And again, if the Rockets are going to continue to operate where, you know, they only use a legitimate backup big very situationally throughout the rest of the season, again, Ime's profinity has been to go to, I don't know if I used that word right. I don't think I did. Anyways, I don't know what words mean. He's basically gone to Jabari as the backup 5 pretty consistently this season. And so it seems like a waste to either, you know, include Steven Adams in a trade for Cam Johnson just for salary matching purposes when you could potentially fetch another first round pick elsewhere for him, and or keeping Steven Adams past the trade deadline simply for him to expire and getting no value back for him, and he signs elsewhere in the offseason. Now, if the Rockets do envision a world where they want to keep Steven Adams on the roster long-term, if they like what he brings, if they like the added dimension of having a legitimate big on the roster and his veteran presence, all that, if they want to keep him and re-sign him this offseason, by all means, go for it. But I don't know if that's what they want ultimately. So I like the idea of the Rockets going after Cam Johnson. I think he would be a fantastic fit on this roster, and he would be an incredible stopgap in the interim, while the Rockets try and figure out, while they try and survive this next stretch of schedule without Jabari Smith Jr. And to kind of wrap things up with a pretty little bow here, if the Rockets did ultimately decide to go to go all in and make a midseason trade for a De'Aaron Fox type or a Devin Booker type or something like that, and if Jalen Green were included in a deal like that, then, or even if Fred VanVleet were included, whatever, Cam Johnson is more than capable of starting, and you can slot him all the way down. He's a knockdown shooter. Again, he can play the 2 for you offensively. Even Dillon Brooks can play the 2, the way that he's been playing offensively. Those positions are largely kind of meaningless at the end of the day. It's more so about having a lead guard, having the wings, and having a big out there on the floor. I'm curious your thoughts, though. Would you like to see the Rockets make a move for Cam Johnson to fill the void left by Jabari Smith Jr.'s injury? Do you think it would be a mismanagement of assets to trade for a guy like Cam Johnson, even though he'd be a very serviceable starting level player, or, you know, a very, very impactful player off the bench? Again, Cam Johnson is a tried and true, a tested finals level role player. And he addresses some of the Rockets' issues this season, in addition to being, again, a potential stopgap for Jabari Smith Jr. while he's out due to injury. I'm curious all your thoughts on everything we discussed in today's episode. Let me know in the YouTube comments. Remember, the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop the comments while you're there. Subscribe to the daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.